The sun was setting over Monaco's glittering coastline, casting an orange glow over the rooftops and the calm waters below. Ariana, a lively 10-year-old with bright hazel eyes and curly brown hair, was sprawled out on the living room floor, her favorite stuffed rabbit nestled beside her. She was usually full of energy after school, bounding around the apartment with an endless stream of chatter. But lately, something had changed. Before we get deeper into the story, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Leave a comment below. Ruby, Ariana's mother, watched her from the kitchen. She'd noticed the shift in her daughter's mood over the past few days. Ariana had become unusually quiet, retreating into herself more often. Her appetite had diminished, and she was spending more time alone in her room, hugging her rabbit tightly. Ruby's gut twisted with worry, but she didn't want to press her daughter too hard. Ariana would tell her what was bothering her when she was ready, Ruby thought. But that evening, as they sat down for dinner, Ruby noticed Ariana squirming in her chair, a pained expression crossing her face. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Ruby asked, trying to keep her voice light. Ariana glanced up, her brow furrowed. "Mama, it hurts." Ruby's heart skipped a beat. "What hurts, baby?" Ariana hesitated, looking away as she fidgeted with her fork. "Down there," she whispered. The air seemed to leave Ruby's lungs in an instant. "Down there?" she repeated, her voice soft but tinged with alarm. "Can you show me where, Ari?" Ariana slowly nodded, and Ruby led her to the bedroom, her pulse racing. In the dim light, Ariana pointed to her lower abdomen, wincing. Ruby's hands shook as she gently checked her daughter, her worst fears beginning to take shape when she noticed the redness, the swelling. "Ari," Ruby's voice cracked as she knelt beside her daughter. "Has anyone touched you there? You can tell me. I'll always believe you." Ariana's lip quivered as tears welled up in her eyes. She nodded, unable to speak at first. "It was Uncle Martin," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. Ruby froze, her mind reeling. Uncle Martin, her older brother, the man who had been such an integral part of their lives. He was Ariana's godfather, someone Ruby had trusted implicitly. The realization struck her like a physical blow, leaving her breathless, her heart pounding. "What did he do, Ari?" Ruby asked, holding back her own tears. "When did this happen?" Ariana's small body shook with quiet sobs. He told me it was a game. He said it was our secret." Her voice broke as she buried her face in her hands. "I didn't want to, Mama. I didn't want to." Ruby's hands trembled as she held Ariana close, her own tears falling freely now. She had to be strong. She couldn't let Ariana see the full extent of her horror, her guilt for not seeing it sooner. Her daughter had been hurt, violated, in the worst possible way, by the person Ruby had trusted most. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry," Ruby whispered into Ariana's hair. "This is not your fault. I'm going to make sure this never happens again." Without a second thought, Ruby reached for her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed the police. Her voice was steady but laced with fury as she explained the situation. Within minutes, officers were on their way. The hours that followed felt like a blur. Ariana was taken to the hospital for a medical examination, the sterile white walls and harsh lights contrasting with the warmth Ruby had always tried to create for her daughter at home. Ruby stayed by Ariana's side, her heart breaking a little more with each question the doctors and detectives asked. The next few days were consumed by interviews, investigations, and visits from social workers. Ruby's brother Martin was arrested, denying everything at first. But the evidence in Ariana's brave testimony painted a clear picture of his betrayal. He had violated the very trust Ruby had placed in him, and in doing so, had shattered Ariana's innocence. Ruby's heart ached with guilt. She replayed every memory of Martin being around Ariana, birthday parties, family gatherings, holidays, and wondered how she had missed it. How had she not seen the signs? How had she let this happen under her own roof? The guilt was suffocating, a constant weight on her chest. But no matter how much she blamed herself, Ruby knew that she had to focus on helping Ariana heal. Her daughter needed her now more than ever. The weeks that followed were filled with therapy sessions for Ariana and for Ruby too. Ariana's therapist was kind and patient, helping her navigate the confusion and trauma she was carrying. Ariana was strong, braver than Ruby could have ever imagined, but there were still dark days. Days when Ariana wouldn't speak, when she would cling to Ruby, refusing to leave her side. Nights when she would wake up screaming, plagued by nightmares of her uncle's face. But there were also moments of light. Slowly, Ariana began to open up again. She started drawing, expressing her feelings through art when words felt too difficult. One day, she handed Ruby a picture she had drawn. It was of the two of them standing on the beach, holding hands under a bright sunny sky. Ariana was smiling in the drawing, her stuffed rabbit beside her. Ruby knelt down, hugging her tightly. "We're going to be okay, Ari," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise." Martin was eventually convicted. The trial had been long and grueling, with Ruby and Ariana having to relive every painful detail as they took the stand. The courtroom was filled with tense silence when Ariana, with trembling hands clutching her rabbit, bravely told her story. She spoke in a voice that shook with fear, but carried an undeniable strength. It was heartbreaking to watch, but Ruby stood by her, holding her hand every step of the way. Ruby's family was shattered by the revelations. Many couldn't believe that Martin, a beloved uncle and brother, could have done such a thing. Ruby had to distance herself from those family members who refused to see the truth, focusing on protecting Ariana from the toxic disbelief and the judgment that sometimes followed. The day the verdict came, guilty on all charges, was bittersweet. Justice had been served, but no punishment could undo the damage done. No sentence could erase the pain Ariana had endured. Martin was sentenced to prison, and for the first time in months, Ruby allowed herself to exhale. But even as she did, she knew that their journey wasn't over. Healing wasn't linear. It wouldn't be simple. In the months that followed, Ruby watched Ariana carefully. Some days, it was as though the weight of the trauma had lifted a little. Ariana would laugh again, play with her friends, and come home from school with stories of the day. But there were still nights when Ariana would crawl into Ruby's bed, unable to sleep, needing the comfort of her mother's arms to keep the nightmares at bay. Ruby was learning to be patient with Ariana and with herself. She attended therapy as well, trying to work through the overwhelming guilt and anger she felt. She blamed herself for not seeing the signs, for trusting Martin so blindly. But her therapist gently reminded her that predators like him were masters of manipulation, that she wasn't at fault for his actions. "You're doing everything right now," the therapist would tell her. "You acted the moment Ariana spoke up. You're helping her heal. You're a good mother, Ruby." Still, it was hard for Ruby to shake the feeling that she could have done more, could have protected Ariana better. But she also knew that moving forward, she had to focus on rebuilding their lives, on making sure Ariana felt safe and loved. One evening, about a year after Martin's conviction, Ruby took Ariana to the beach. It was a warm, golden evening, with the sun slowly setting over the horizon, casting long shadows over the sand. The beach had always been their place of peace, a retreat from the chaos of life. Ruby watched as Ariana ran toward the water, her curls bouncing with each step, her laughter light and free. For a moment, as she looked out at the sea, Ruby felt a rare sense of calm. She sat on a blanket, watching Ariana play in the waves. In those moments, Ruby could almost forget the darkness that had invaded their lives. Almost. Ariana came running back, her face flushed with excitement, her hands full of seashells. "Mama, look what I found!" she exclaimed, dropping the shells into Ruby's lap. Ruby smiled, admiring each one. "They're beautiful, Ari, just like you." Ariana sat down beside her, leaning against her mother's side. "Do you think everything will go back to how it used to be?" she asked quietly, her eyes searching the horizon. Ruby paused, considering her answer. She didn't want to lie to Ariana, didn't want to give her false hope. "I don't think things will ever be exactly like they used to be," she said gently. "But that doesn't mean we can't still have happiness, Ari. We've been through something really hard, but we're getting stronger. And no matter what, I'm always going to be here for you." Ariana nodded slowly, her small hand reaching for Ruby's. "I know, Mama, I feel safe with you." Ruby's heart swelled with emotion, and she wrapped her arms around her daughter, pulling her close. They sat like that for a long time, watching the waves roll in and out, the sun dipping lower in the sky. As they packed up to leave, Ariana paused and looked out at the ocean one last time. "Mama," she said, her voice soft, "I think I'm going to be okay." Ruby blinked back tears, smiling at her brave little girl. "I know you will, Ari." In the months following that peaceful day at the beach, Ruby and Ariana continued their journey toward healing, one step at a time. They found a rhythm in their lives: school for Ariana, work for Ruby, and therapy sessions where they both learned to process the pain, the guilt, and the complicated emotions left in the wake of the trauma. Life wasn't easy, but it was steady. They had their good days, and they had their bad ones. But through it all, Ruby held on to her daughter, refusing to let the darkness of their past overshadow the light they were building for the future. But healing, as Ruby had learned, wasn't a straight path. There were setbacks, days when Ariana withdrew into herself, becoming the quiet, distant girl she had been immediately after the incident. Those were the days Ruby feared the most. She knew that despite all her love, despite everything they had done to rebuild their lives, Ariana would always carry the weight of what had happened to her. Ruby couldn't protect her from those memories, from the pain that sometimes resurfaced without warning. One such day arrived on a quiet Sunday morning. Ariana had been in good spirits the night before, laughing as they watched a movie together, her usual brightness shining through. But when Ruby walked into her daughter's room the next morning, she found Ariana curled up in bed, staring blankly at the wall, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her arms. "Ari?" Ruby said softly, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Ariana didn't respond at first, her eyes still fixed on some distant point in the room. Ruby's heart clenched with worry. She knew these signs, the retreating, the withdrawal. It was the aftermath of a bad memory, a flashback that brought Ariana back to those terrible moments she was still trying to forget. Ruby reached out, gently stroking Ariana's hair. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything. I'm here." For a long while, they sat in silence, Ruby simply holding her daughter, letting her know that she wasn't alone. Finally, Ariana spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had a dream about him." Ruby's breath caught in her throat. She knew exactly who Ariana meant. "I'm so sorry, baby," Ruby whispered, her voice breaking. Ariana turned to face her mother, her eyes full of tears. "Mama, will it ever go away? Will I ever stop being scared?" Ruby's heart shattered at the sight of her daughter's pain, but she knew she couldn't lie to her. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said gently, her voice full of love and honesty. "I wish I could tell you it'll all go away, that you'll never feel scared again. But some things, they leave scars that take a long time to heal." Ariana sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I hate feeling this way." "I know," Ruby said, hugging her close. "But you're so strong, Ari. You've come so far. And even on the days when it feels like you're back where you started, remember that you're not. You're moving forward, even if it's just one tiny step at a time." Ariana buried her face in Ruby's shoulder, her small body trembling with sobs. Ruby held her tightly, wishing with everything she had that she could take her daughter's pain away. But she couldn't. All she could do was be there, to love her, to protect her, and to help her navigate the dark moments when they came. After a while, Ariana's sobs quieted, and she pulled back, wiping her tear-streaked face. "I'm trying, Mama. I'm really trying." "I know you are, sweetheart, and that's what matters." Ruby kissed the top of her head, brushing the curls away from Ariana's face. "You don't have to do it all at once. We'll take it one day at a time, okay? Together." Ariana nodded, a faint smile playing at her lips. Together. The days that followed were slow but steady. Ariana returned to school, and Ruby continued her own healing work, processing the guilt she still carried. Though life wasn't perfect, they had begun to find peace in the little things. weekends spent at the beach, quiet evenings with books and movies, and moments of laughter that reminded Ruby of the child Ariana had been before everything changed. It was during one of these quiet moments, as they were sitting at the kitchen table doing a puzzle together, that Ariana looked up at her mother, her expression serious. "Mama?" "Yes, love." "Do you think I'll ever be able to trust people again?" Ruby's heart ached at the question, but she smiled softly. "I think you will, Ari. Trust is something that takes time to rebuild, especially when it's been broken. But I believe you're capable of trusting again because you're brave, and you're strong, and you're surrounded by people who love you." Ariana looked down at the puzzle piece in her hand, turning it over thoughtfully. "Do you trust people, Mama? After what happened?" Ruby paused, considering her answer. It had been hard for her, too, learning to trust again after such a deep betrayal. But she had made a choice, for Ariana's sake and for her own. "I do," Ruby said finally. "It's not always easy, but I trust the people who've shown me that they deserve it. And I trust you, Ari, more than anything." Ariana smiled, a real smile this time, the kind that reached her eyes. "I trust you too, Mama." In that moment, Ruby felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. They weren't completely healed. There were still scars, still memories that would surface from time to time. But they were healing, together. As the years passed, Ariana continued to grow into a remarkable young woman. She was strong, resilient, and kind, using her own experience to help others who had faced similar trauma. She became an advocate, speaking out for children who didn't have a voice, ensuring that what happened to her wouldn't happen to others. And through it all, Ruby stood by her, proud of the incredible person Ariana had become, grateful for the bond they shared. It wasn't a perfect ending. It was a bittersweet one, full of challenges and pain. But it was also a story of survival, of love, and of a mother and daughter who had faced the darkest moments of their lives and come out the other side, stronger than ever. Ruby's heart ached at the question, but she smiled softly. "I think you will, Ari. Trust is something that takes time to rebuild, especially when it's been broken. But I believe you're capable of trusting again because you're brave, and you're strong, and you're surrounded by people who love you." Ariana looked down at the puzzle piece in her hand, turning it over thoughtfully. "Do you trust people, Mama? After what happened?" Ruby paused, considering her answer. It had been hard for her, too, learning to trust again after such a deep betrayal. But she had made a choice, for Ariana's sake and for her own. "I do," Ruby said finally. "It's not always easy, but I trust the people who've shown me that they deserve it. And I trust you, Ari, more than anything." Ariana smiled, a real smile this time, the kind that reached her eyes. "I trust you too, Mama." In that moment, Ruby felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. They weren't completely healed. There were still scars, still memories that would surface from time to time. But they were healing, together. As the years passed, Ariana continued to grow into a remarkable young woman. She was strong, resilient, and kind, using her own experience to help others who had faced similar trauma. She became an advocate, speaking out for children who didn't have a voice, ensuring that what happened to her wouldn't happen to others. And through it all, Ruby stood by her, proud of the incredible person Ariana had become, grateful for the bond they shared. It wasn't a perfect ending. It was a bittersweet one, full of challenges and pain. But it was also a story of survival, of love, and of a mother and daughter who had faced the darkest moments of their lives and come out the other side, stronger than ever.